This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
And this is to satisfy the youngsters who say that I don't get the type of music youngsters want. This is more a little in the rock and roll vein. The Four Lovers and the Apple Number. Now, boys, take it.
CBS presents this program in color.
See the nice man? He is asleep beneath the tree. Everything is peaceful and serene. Do you know why it is always nice and peaceful here? It is make-believe. That is why. Real worlds are different. We know. We work against real cancer in the real world. Last year, over 200,000 people were cured of cancer. Annual checkups can help save thousands more. If only the people would come. See your doctor when you think everything is nice and rosy. That is smart. Do you know why we talk to you like this? Because when we talk to you like adults, you don't listen.
SSP, 17 great machines.
And folks, for 1972, SSP has done it again.
It's the new red-hot Indy Racer, Railbird, the Demon Dragster, the Space-Age Blackjack, the daring Dodge Super Stalker.
Yes, sir. There's power aplenty from the SSPs for 72. Test drive one today.
SSP by Kenner. Each SSP racer sold separately.
WCAR-TV Television 3 in Rapids, Virginia now concludes another full day of vital broadcasting from its television and radio center on Bush Street. This seal of the National Review Board of the National Association of Broadcasters is the symbol of good television. WCAR-TV subscribes to the high standards set forth in the TV code. To see the best TV, stay with Television 3.
On the ultra-high frequency band at an effective radiated power of 500 kilowatts, with transmitting facilities located at 29 Fort Greene Place in Brooklyn, New York. And now the staff and management of WNYE-TV Channel 25 wishes one and all a very good day.
As part of the Channel 31 broadcast playing its long frequency of 572 to 578 megahertz by authority of the Federal Communications Commission. The station operates under the direct supervision of Mayor John B. Lindsay as part of the Municipal Service Administration.
We will return to Tora, 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 starring E.G. Marshall and Jason Robards. An entire evening of Christmas specials, starting with The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
I must stop Christmas from coming.
Followed by Frosty the Snowman.
What's the joke? The snowman can't talk.
Finally, Patricia Neal and Richard Thomas.
What is that?
The Homecoming. See The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, Frosty the Snowman, and The Homecoming. Friday, December 12th at 8, 7 Central. This is CBS.
2 happy holiday specials, starting at 8, 7 Central and Mountain Time.
Monday on CBS.
Saturday, laughable, lovable Frosty the Snowman comes to life in the heartwarming story of a little girl's love, an original holiday classic. Then 'twas the night before Christmas, an enchanting tale about boys and girls everywhere on the most important night of the year. 2 holiday treats, Saturday at 8, 7 Central and Mountain.
Monday.
Merry Christmas!
The Peanuts gang is filled with the Christmas spirit until...
What a treat!
It's a Charlie Brown Christmas, Monday at 8, 7 Central.
We now return to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
This is CBS.
This is KFSM-TV, Channel 5, Fort Smith.
And now, the telecast day for KFSM-TV, Channel 5 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, comes to a close. KFSM-TV is owned and operated by the Times Southwest Broadcasting Incorporated of Fort Smith, with studios and offices at 318 North 13th Street, Fort Smith, Arkansas. KFSM-TV telecast on Channel 5 with a visual carrier frequency of 77.24 megahertz, an oral carrier frequency of 81.74 megahertz, as authorized by the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, D.C. KFSM-TV transmits on microwave transmitters KLG-68 and KHD-43. KFSM-TV is affiliated with the CBS television network. We'll return to the air tomorrow morning. And now, on behalf of the management and staff and the engineers on duty this evening, good night and pleasant dreams.
Now, Jim Jensen, Carol Martin, Dr. Frank Field, and the Channel 2 News team. This is Channel 2 News at 5. Everything you need to know, because anything can happen in New York.
And leaving the airways after 62 years, WNBC Radio signs off. In just a few minutes, a change in call letters will signal the end to a signal radio fans have heard for years. It also signals the end of an era. At 5:30, a few seconds from now, WNBC AM will sign off for good. And while another station is taking over its position on the dial, listeners will not hear a sound that's been familiar for more than 6 decades. Correspondent Jane Velez-Mitchell was at Rockefeller Center on the day the music died.
I'm Alan Combs, and it's an honor to be asked to host the very last show on WNBC. We have a very big supply of tissues here in the studio.
All day, a sense of melancholy spilled out onto the airwaves of 660 WNBC. Radio personality Alan Combs used the station's final broadcast to reminisce with famous former DJs about one of America's most famous radio stations and its demise.
Are you at Radio Central on the 5th floor?
No, we used to be on 5. We're on 2 now.
Oh, well, you lost 3 floors.
It makes it easier to jump out the window this one.
There's more reason to. I'm appalled at the fact that the station's being discontinued.
It's a very bitter experience for me that WNBC will not be on my radio tomorrow morning.
When former WNBC DJ Cousin Brucey and others tune in to 660 AM, they'll hear instead WFAN, the sports station, which has been at 1050 on your AM dial. WNBC giant Don Imus is among the few making the hop to WFAN. They'll join the sports channel with its mix of Knicks, Rangers, and Mets games and sports talk.
WFAN, where the fan is first.
The rest of WNBC's crew, about 45 staffers, are out of work. NBC's parent company, General Electric, has decided to sell off its radio division of several stations around the country. Executives here say it's not been as profitable as other divisions. Today, despite attempts at a graduation party, the mood was clearly that of a wake. As boxes moved out, someone threw a noose out the window.
It just doesn't seem like it should be over. It's a tradition. There are so few left.
Though it's operated under the guise of a variety of call letters, this station has been on the air since 1922. Cousin Brucey is just one of many famous figures in entertainment who have gone out over these airwaves. Bob Hope, Jack Benny, and later on, Dr. Joyce Brothers, Don Imus, Howard Stern, Wolfman Jack, Soupy Sales, Ed McMahon, just to name a few. Now with FM strong, AM's hurting. Also, government rules may have forced GE to choose between owning TV or radio in New York. Execs believe the company opted for the profitable Channel 4 WNBC TV. For many radio fans, there are memories and the sound of silence. Jane Velez-Mitchell, Channel 2 News.
Tonight from Kabul, Afghanistan, more U.S. Marines and Army soldiers hit the ground and get ready to roll for a final assault on the Taliban, to hunt for Osama bin Laden, and to deliver humanitarian aid. We'll bring you complete coverage inside Afghanistan. Also tonight, the life and death of a music legend, the Beatles, George Harrison.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Continuing coverage of the war on terrorism. Reporting tonight from Kabul, Afghanistan, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening from Kabul, Afghanistan.
Another major story tonight is the passing of George Harrison. The former Beatle died in Los Angeles from cancer, his family by his side. He was 58 years old. Harrison's life and music reached for the same notes, inner strength and inner peace, and struck a chord with millions. CBS's Mark Phillips reports on the death and life of George Harrison.
There's a Beatles song for just about every occasion.
I read the news today, oh boy.
And today, the news was bad. They gathered at the John Lennon Memorial in New York to mark the death of another Beatle. And then there were two. George Harrison's death, unlike Lennon's, was neither sudden, nor violent, nor shocking. His religious conviction, he had said, expressed in his first solo hit single, had prepared him for death. Of all the Beatles, George Harrison hadn't been the brash one, or the cute one, or the funny one. He'd been the thoughtful one, seeking not fame, but answers.
The purpose of life is to find out who am I, why am I here, and where am I going. That's what we need answering.
And Harrison, as his friends knew, had found those answers.
I'm just privileged to have known him, and I love him like he's my brother. It was a very sad day for me and for a lot of other people.
It's a big cigarette for a big man.
George Harrison had had throat, then lung, then brain cancer. The cigarette gags, amusing when he was young, had long since stopped being funny. The man they called the reluctant Beatle is now getting the credit he is due. He was the musical backbone. His were the riffs the whole world played air guitar to. He led the group on its journey toward Eastern mysticism. And he, too, was the songwriter of enduring tunes. Even Sinatra called Something the best love song of the past 50 years. If the Beatles provided the soundtrack for a generation, Harrison provided the theme songs for his own life.
All things must pass. It doesn't take long to be from 17 to being 57. 40 years just goes like that.
In his life, George Harrison never saw himself as more than he was, a working-class rocker from Liverpool who was good enough and lucky enough to become famous around the world. More than guitars are gently weeping today. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Next up on the Friday CBS Evening News, the political blame game heats up over the downturn in the U.S. economy.
Was Bob Simon. Simon was in his 19th season on 60 Minutes, and before that, he'd spent nearly 30 years on this program. He was among the most courageous and gifted reporters of our time, and he reminded us how good journalism can be.
I'm from the Bronx. And in fact, it took a long time before CBS would put me on the air because I had such a thick Bronx accent.
We're going to pick up an American.
The voice would become unmistakable, the perspective indispensable.
They don't know how many communists they're up against. They do know the enemy bunkers are less than 30 feet away.
Bob Simon hurried to Southeast Asia in 1971 because, as he put it, history was being made.
Civilian casualties were not announced, but it was another case of destroying a village in order to save it.
Once you've covered a war, he said, there's nothing like it. So after he left Vietnam on one of the last helicopters out, he went back to war 34 times, asking questions that were straight, simple, devastating.
General, you've got the reputation of being a first-rate Israeli officer. Why are your soldiers killing so many kids?
Simon took risks, and the people who liked to control information hated him for it. But the audience was always the wiser.
The Israelis had no idea that we were filming them. And the Israelis caught up with the Palestinian boys and just beat the hell out of them. I mean, very vicious. They were beating them with stones. We got that, we filmed it, and that created a big scandal.
During the Gulf War in 1991, Simon was captured by Iraqi forces, along with producer Peter Bluff and their crew, Roberto Alvarez and Juan Caldera.
And we eventually wound up in the secret police headquarters called the Muhabarat and treated very badly.
They were beaten, threatened with death, but released after 40 days.
As you can see, we've lost a little weight. We've aged a little, but we're fine.
Simon mastered something about television that others miss. The power is in the words, and with fine detail and sleight of hand, he delivered the truth you never saw coming.
Does anyone know her name?
No, we don't know her name. She died quickly, this girl with no name. Sarajevo is going slowly, to the grave embarrassment of all those countries who've decided to let it happen.
War was not his only adventure. He went into the wild, often, especially in these latter years.
You want to rubber down? Go on, rubber down. An animal is never duplicitous. It's very refreshing to go see them after you've spent a lot of time interviewing politicians.
Even in the Arctic, Simon enjoyed the more civilized side of life.
The Scotch is 20 years old. The ice is about 2,000. There are strange bubbles, and the idea is rather enchanting.
Someone once asked,
and we begin with the COVID
done,
surge, and the data makes it clear just how quickly the virus is spreading. Yesterday in New York State, there were more than 21,000 positive cases reported. That is a new pandemic record. The positivity rate, nearly 8%. That is now up from 5.8% just 3 days before. And there is some breaking news tonight. We just learned that all remaining performances of the Christmas Spectacular starring the Radio City Rockettes have been canceled for the rest of the season due to the breakthrough cases. CBS 2's Alice Gaynor live now outside of Radio City Music Hall with more. Disappointing news for fans, that's for sure, Alice.
Oh, that's right, Christine. I mean, people are still showing up here thinking they have tickets to the performances. They didn't just cancel those 4 performances today. They canceled them for the rest of the season as of a few minutes ago, releasing a statement that says they are unable to continue performances due to increasing challenges from the pandemic. You know, they performed more than 100 shows over the past 7 weeks. Now people will be getting their money back. Some were already seated, others in line outside.
They just came back in the line and they were like, it's canceled. And we were like, what?
These grandparents came in from North Carolina just to take their grandkids to the performance.
How would you imagine that I would feel right now? I'm disappointed for them, especially.
First, several Broadway performances. Now, Radio City closed the curtain.
Broadway is huge for us.
Vijay Dandapani is president and CEO of the Hotel Association of New York City.
Last week, the city had its best ever occupancy end rate since the pandemic started. So the occupancy was 81%.
Are you concerned that all of these closures are going to affect the progress you've made?
Well, yeah, they're certainly going to arrest it for now, temporarily. This current weekend that's coming is still okay.
The show cancellations combined with holiday party cancellations and delays in return to office aren't helping Manhattan dig out of its economic hole. The Partnership for New York City surveyed major employers at the end of October, and of Manhattan's 1 million office workers, 28% were at the workplace on an average weekday, with 49% expected by end of January. Now those numbers are dropping again.
The lack of office workers, business travelers, and tourists has kept consumer-oriented services, things like restaurants and bars, retail, really leisure and hospitality just generally, from bouncing back. As the path of the virus goes, so does the path of the economy.
Now, for some, that path has been right out of Manhattan. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York saying that Fairfield County, Connecticut, and northern New Jersey have benefited from all of this because people who used to commute here into Manhattan are now working from home in those areas and spending their money in those local economies. Now, back to the breaking news. Radio City Music Hall behind me here, they just announced moments ago they are canceling the rest of their performances this season. We've also just learned that Alvin Ailey is canceling the rest of its performances as well. Do stay with CBS 2 News, and we will continue to bring you the very latest on all of this breaking news as it comes to us. We are live in Midtown. Christine, Alice Gaynor, CBS 2 News.
All right, Alice, it's changing every minute. The impact here, more information. Hamilton shows canceled through Sunday. MJ the Musical, dark through December 26th. Moulin Rouge canceled tonight, along with Mrs. Doubtfire, which doesn't resume until next Tuesday. Tina, the Tina Turner Musical, just announced shows are canceled through Monday.